I'm the Home Slice, Ascend Hyperion. Welcome to another episode of Sandbox Evolved, the show where we break down and appreciate the last 20 plus years of Halo's gameplay sandbox. In the last episode of Sandbox Evolved, I wrapped up my 3-part series breaking down the grenade launcher class of Halo weapons, which I argue to be some of the most unique and well-designed weapons in the whole franchise. Be sure to check those out and the full playlist for more. Today, and for the first time on the series, we turn our gaze to not just a weapon, but an entire vehicle, the one and only Gauss Warthog. But what does the laser golf ball cannon do to deserve such a premium spotlight? Well, today I'll break down just how the Gauss Warthog was the first to truly represent the interesting, under-discussed power vehicles have in Halo, and how it's a long-standing representation of an entire classification of gameplay that goes overlooked when people talk about the Halo combat experience. Be sure you stick around for my viewer question at the end, and let's hear from today's sponsor before we unpack the action. Today's video is sponsored by VITERAMEN. Okay, do you like instant ramen? Yes, because you're human. Do you like nutrition? Yes, because you're not a corpse. Seeing as how you answered yes to both of those questions, you need to try VITERAMEN, the nutritionally focused alternative to instant ramen that combines the convenience of boiling noodles and water with the benefits of having enough vitamins and minerals to actually power your body, which we specified is entirely human. I mean, legit, just look at the nutrition facts here. There's more content here than in Halo Infinite. Let me help you get started. Use my special link below, try VITERAMEN, and not only will you get a special discount, you'll get access to a whole bundle of VITERAMEN products, so don't wait. Use my link below and try VITERAMEN for yourself today. If you live under a rock, or, have the perfectly valid excuse of not having played any Halo prior to Halo Infinite, you may not be familiar with the Gauss Hog, which was the first ever Warthog variant in a Halo release, debuting in Halo 2. Unlike the typical chain gun Hog, the Gauss is outfitted with a Gauss cannon, which fires a semi-automatic bolt of near-instant death at any poor target caught in its laser vision. It one-shots most generic enemies and players, tears through light vehicles, embarrasses other medium vehicles, and honestly, it murks heavy vehicles too. And if you're a Banshee or a Falcon, well, the alternate name for the Gauss would be the Fly Swatter. Does any of that make the Gauss seem a little overpowered? Well, that's because it is, silly. That's sort of the point of the whole video. Well, okay, not entirely. I mean, yes, it's important for us to kind of recognize that conceptually, in the playpen, the Gauss Hog is overpowered, as it easily stomps on players and other vehicles. But it's the combined details of just how it is overpowered and how it managed to be overpowered for literally nearly 20 years that is what inspired this video. If you're a true believer of the Ascend Hyperion way of Halo, you'll recall how I spoke about how Halo is defined by a design logic called the dance. The dance is the symbiotic relationship between 3 key parts of Halo: mobility, which is Halo's inherently higher levels of vertical and airborne mobility; health, which is the acknowledgement of how Halo's more drawn-out time to kills allow for variability in fights; and finally, the golden triangle, which in itself is the symbiotic relationship between guns, grenades, and melee. If you want to make high-impact changes to the Halo experience, you tweak the weight on these 3 corners, and each Halo title has always done just that. What I'm saying is the easiest way for Halo gameplay to change while retaining its own designs is to alter how the player is delivered these 3 points. But there is one element of Halo's gameplay that does just that, and that facet is vehicles. Vehicles increase all 3 points of the dance, giving players higher mobility, greater health, and greater damage more often than is naturally obtained within the Golden Triangle. And among the vehicles that makes the greatest impact to this change is the Gauss Hog. The Gauss Hog gunner is highly mobile, has the benefit of the Hog eating and blocking damage, and of course can one-shot virtually any player and make quick work of any opposing vehicle. Now, I admit, in a similar vein, the Scorpion and Mantis get similar praise, but for different reasons that would require their own videos. The other thing that makes me more fixated on the Gauss is how its greater mobility allows it to participate in far more varied fight stages, and in certain Halo games, the Gauss appears more frequently than the tank does in standard matchmaking. If you've ever played a Halo title with the Gauss, you're probably far too familiar with the terrifying reality of having to face one in play. And very similar to what I said about the Mangler in Halo Infinite, the Gauss is so powerful it makes itself essential to play on maps it appears on. Teams must go tit for tat on Gauss Hogs, just like they go tit for tat on the Mangler on Bazaar. And it's, in my opinion, it's a very prestigious status to have in Halo Sandbox. I mean, do you ever see two teams on Blood Gulch like rushing to match up plasma rifles? Do you ever see any heated clashes of brute shots on Sandbox? Okay, so what I'm saying is, where the Gauss Hog appears, it is essential. Keyword: bold, underlined, strike through, gender bent, censored, uncensored, Turkish, essential. And while you can say the same thing is similar for the Scorpion and the Mantis, again, that's not 100% the point, because what's even more impressive is how the Gauss retains its status as essential. The thing about the Scorpion and Mantis is they are very intentionally designed as critical combat pieces that teams rally around and rely on. The Gauss, however, is not designed for that role, and as such, at the earliest indication of it breaking ranks in Halo 2, Bungie could have corrected the course in Halo 3, nerfing it or otherwise to reduce it back down to simply a powered up medium vehicle. But they didn't. So all they had to do in Halo Reach was they didn't. And when 343 took over, all they had to do in Halo 4 was they didn't. So when the release of Halo 5, they didn't. What I'm getting at here is that the Gauss, by sheer stroke of lucky imbalancing, sat atop a throne reserved for a long time just by the Scorpion and then the Mantis. It's like if the Chevy Cruze kept placing third every year at the Formula 1 Grand Prix, and the showrunners were just like, I don't think a compact sedan should be beating the literal best feats of mechanical engineering ever, but it makes a cool noise, so we'll allow it. That's my fascination here. It's one thing that vehicles represent a hidden fourth tier of the sandbox's power. It also shows just how simply making something stronger doesn't necessarily make it better, you know? So like, for example, when Halo 5 allowed you to actually spawn in with and use a detached Gauss turret, you'd predict that suddenly every player would be running around with one. I mean, it literally one-shot kills. But that wasn't enough to make it something tier 4. The detached turret does not offer you the health and mobility advantages that the Hog does, so it becomes magnitudes less desirable. The success and prowess of the Gauss Hog is great, and for nearly 2 decades, it sat atop a cool little throne of its own as the underground king of vehicles. That's exactly why it was removed in Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite operates on an underlying rule that no one item should be too powerful. While we would need an entire video to really discuss how Infinite changes vehicles and vehicle gameplay, the important thing to note is that teams now do not spawn with essential vehicles. Because 343 wanted to diminish the impact uneven use of essential vehicles had on play, which is a long-standing problem that BTB has struggled with. They even took what I believe to be the overly conservative approach of stripping away special vehicles like ghosts and choppers from teams as well. If the Gauss wasn't infinite, they'd have to either drop it in with special vehicles or have it on reserve till heavy vehicles dropped. The problem with dropping a Gauss in early is that no team in Infinite is really guaranteed a pull on those symmetrical drops. It's very easy to nab both of what drops down in a Pelican drop in BTB, and can you imagine if a coordinated team robbed both Gauss Hogs, maybe 20 kills into the game, it'd be over. But the problem with dropping in late is similar, but now the Gauss will be replacing a heavy vehicle drop, which by design, it's not meant to do. The Gauss is not a quote-unquote heavy vehicle. In Infinite's overly controlling vehicle spawn system, the Gauss just does not fit. I think that's the best way to wrap up this video. The acknowledgement that the undoing of the Gauss Hog was not some deliberate nerf or design change. It was the fact that the Gauss can't change, and therefore if a system can't support it, the Gauss gets cut. It was its own undoing from Halo, which for me is all the more impressive because certain vehicles and weapons in Halo have seen themselves diminished to comply with certain parameters. In a franchise that changes greatly in each iteration, one of the few unwaveringly similar designs to survive both the classic and reclaimer eras was the Gauss Hog, and its strong manipulation of the corners of the dance is a great symbol for how effective players can see gameplay change when they gain advantage in these corners. For a design to remain not just so consistent over nearly 20 years, but to retain an essential function, to define its own niche, and to, like I said, sit atop its own throne, especially in Halo, where things are changing from iteration, from title to title to title, is, in one word, impressive. It's almost unheard of. But just because the Gauss itself didn't change too much in these titles, that didn't mean the games around them didn't change. And I want you to start thinking about how the Gauss and its unwavering design affected other games with different designs. So for today's viewer question, let's talk about it like this. In which title do you think the Gauss performed the best? And in which do you think it performed the worst? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sandbox Evolved. You can watch more episodes like this in the official Sandbox Evolved playlist. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not, and leave a like on the video if you liked it. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram for more fresh-baked Halo content, and until next time, I'll catch y'all later.